Hey guys, Mr. O, helping you out with the week 12 packet and the homework day 30 help. I'm gonna do numbers 2, numbers 10, and then a mirrored version of what you expect in number 7. So when you're given a function, which is doing, it's taking some x value and giving you the y value that comes from that, the inverse function of that function, which is why I labeled this y or f of x, and I called this my f inverse of x. Your inverse function is taking your old y, basically, and turning that into your old x. So it's basically just switching the positions of your x's and y's, and it just creates an entire table using that rule. The same way you had in question number 1, these were just written more so as coordinates. If this is what f of x gives you, it takes in -3 and cranks out 7.4. Your f inverse function of x will take 7.4 and crank out a -3. So all you're doing is switching the contents of this table back and forth. That'll become a 4 to a -1. Your inverse function would take 0.6 and spit out a 1. Your inverse function would take 2.8, your old y, and spit out 3. And it would take in your old y, 6.2, and spit out 5. That's all an inverse function does, is it takes the y that you got out from your original function, it takes that instead and spits out the x value that your original function took. Question number 10, write the inverse of the equation in f inverse of x notation. The easiest way to do this when you're not given your linear function in y is equal to mx plus b form, like in this case it's given in standard to some degree, except the 2x should be there if it's in standard. So put this in y is equal to mx plus b form, which really means just isolating your y by itself. So I do that by subtracting a 2x from both sides, and then dividing everything by a -7. Notice I do that carefully, and that applies to each term. This negative divided by that negative makes this a positive. That -28 divided by a -7 makes this a +4. So my y is equal to mx plus b format of this is now y is equal to 2/7 x plus 4. This is the equation that is the same as this in standard notation. And now I can take this and apply my careful set of steps to work through number 10, which is actually asking us to find the inverse of that. So I'm going to create some more space. And to find the inverse of this function, your step 1 is we don't need to anymore because this is our f of x. It's already written as a y. So you switch the positions of your x's and y's. So this y will become x. And your 2/7 x will become 2/7 y plus 4. And then the goal is to now isolate this new y and write this y as a function of x. So get rid of your 4 by subtracting a 4 from both sides. And get rid of this 2/7 coefficient by multiplying by what I've now let you guys know is basically the reciprocal of this function. Not the opposite reciprocal, but just the reciprocal of that fraction. So by 7/2. If you do that, this becomes a 7/2 times this entire expression binomial right here, whereas these cancel from your y's, so you have 7/2 of x minus 4 is equal to y. Perfectly acceptable. If we want to put it in that y is equal to mx plus b form, we just have to distribute it. It becomes a 7/2 x. The 7/2 times the 4, 2 cuts into that twice, so we really have minus a 14 being equal to y, which I'm now going to call my f inverse of x. This is the inverse of the original function that we started with. If this is the function, y is equal to 2/7 x plus 4, your inverse function is y is equal to 7/2 x minus 14. And you can test this again by plugging in an x value and keeping in mind the y value that you get out. So if I plug in a 7 here for x, this becomes a 2/7 times 7, which is a 2. That 2 plus the 4 is a 6. So the coordinate that this linear function gives me is it takes in a 7 and gives me a 6. My inverse function should take a 6. I multiply that in here. 7/2 times 6. The 6 gets divided by the 3 2 times. You have a 7 times 3, which is 21. That 21 minus 7, or 21 minus 14 is a 7. So this inverse function will take a 6 and spit out a 7, which shows you again that nature of your coordinates being flipped. I'm going to create some more space for the last one. This mirror of question number 10 Says a certain subscription service allows you to find or allows you to buy seasons of The Wire based off of a base fee of $999 and 75 cents per season. The total cost function being that fixed price that you pay, $9.99, and then 75 cents per season, where X is the number of seasons of The Wire that you order. So part one says to find the inverse of that function. This is our cost function right here. And we're going to find the inverse of it by following the exact same steps. This C of X we're calling our Y. It's now $9.99 plus 0.75 times X. Switch the positions of your X's and Y's. X becomes $9.99 plus 0.75 times Y. Solving for the new Y by carefully undoing, subtracting $9.99 from both sides. And that is equal to 0.75Y. And then the last step is to divide everything by 0.75. So again, perfectly acceptable to kind of write it like this, which is now my inverse function. Except we used C of X, so instead of F of X, maybe I write this as a C inverse of X function. If you wanted to turn this into your Y is equal to MX plus B form, then you just have to distribute it. Keeping in mind that this one divided by 75 cents is really a 1 over 75 over 100, which I can rewrite as 100 over 75, which I can reduce. 5 goes into that 20 times, 5 goes into that 15 times, 5 goes into that 4, 5 goes into that 3, as a 4/3 coefficient to this, which I could then distribute and continue, it doesn't matter. What do X and C inverse of X represent in your inverse function? We already know what the X and the C of X represent in the original question. We're asking about this in the context of our inverse function. And what this is now doing is taking in the total amount that you paid for this subscription. So X is now the amount that you paid for this. And then the C inverse of X will now tell you how many seasons of The Wire you bought. So if your original function took in X, how many seasons of The Wire you bought, and cranked out the total cost you paid for this subscription service, the inverse function will take in the total amount you paid for the subscription service and tell you how many seasons of The Wire you actually purchased. So using the inverse function, how many seasons of The Wire were bought if the cost is $13.74 for the subscription service, you would plug that $13.74 in here, subtract $9.99 from it, multiply it by 4/3, and that would actually tell you how many seasons of The Wire you bought.